Thank you. Okay, so I'll give a one-line introduction to Rahul. I won't spend too much time. Rahul has been investing in unlisted companies since 1992. So that's what, 33 years? So that makes him probably one of the most experienced, if not the most experienced, early stage VC investor in this country. Some of that experience has been outside India, but a lot of it has been in India. So Rahul, if you look back to the 90s to now, what are the 2 or 3 changes that you see have happened in the investing environment?
I think the ecosystem here has matured very significantly. I think the single biggest difference, I think, is that in the 90s, people became entrepreneurs with very rare exceptions like the gentleman sitting next to me. But most people became entrepreneurs in India for 2 reasons. Daddy doesn't give them enough freedom, so therefore they want to sort of step out and do something on their own. No drive, no energy, very poor homework. Usually when they would come and pitch to us, I would sort of want to leave the meeting within 5 minutes, but out of just pure courtesy, I would sit through for the hour. And the second type was, can't get a job anywhere, therefore turning into an entrepreneur. That was, I would say, account for 99% plus of the entrepreneurs that existed. Today, the entrepreneur that you see who comes into your office is very driven, has done a lot of homework, and it's a totally different ecosystem because even if you decide, and we have to be crazily selective simply because of our own bandwidth and capacity, but even if you decide not to do something, I think that we usually look at maybe 1,100 opportunities before we do one, but I would say that there are at least 4 or 5 more opportunities which we could have easily done on another day, and it's very tough to distinguish. And therefore, I think that the sheer quantity and the quality of the funnel that you see in India is completely different. I've sat on investment committees around the world. I don't see the kind of entrepreneurial energy that you see here anywhere else. So it's quite unique in that
Rahul,
sense.
see, it's like this, the danger then is, if doing a startup has become fashionable and has become a mainstream rational career option for people who are qualified and talented, do you run the risk of investing behind dabblers who will try entrepreneur 2-3 years after that, they say, hey, we're quitting, we're going to a job and it's not working, and agla round nahi ho to main ja raha hu. There was this business of I'll succeed come what may, I'll keep at it come what may, whether or not I have money, are you running that risk?
I think you've touched on something very important, because I think that's a very, very real risk, for the reason that a lot of the very qualified people who get into this, I mean, the sort of pedigreed academic institutions, people, they've never failed in their lives. And I, up to now in my entire career, have never come across an original business plan which has been actually delivered to. The original business plan, the original metrics, the original thought process. I find that entrepreneurship is what I call a Bayesian revisionistic kind of mindset you need, and you will have lots of failures before you succeed. And if someone doesn't have the mindset to be able to take failure, regroup, rethink, and then not only himself or herself be convinced that I'm going to try this and I'm going to make this work, but to carry a team along, an entrepreneur will not succeed. And that's a very high bar, and according to me, that's the single most important ingredient for an entrepreneur to succeed.
So now you have a new risk, which is investing behind a highly qualified person who perhaps is not that committed, although will pretend to be when he comes to pitch to you.
It's a judgment call at the end of the day, and it's a very hard one to make. I mean, I think that one's confidence level when one makes that call is low, inevitably. It is a bit of a tough one.
So also, this tsunami of capital that has come in post the global financial crisis in India and around the world actually, but in India also, in private markets and other markets, but let's say in private markets, uh, are the days of frugal entrepreneurship over? And therefore, as an investor, either you have a large fund and you bet big time, large checks in companies and hope some succeed, or you go in very early with small checks and hope some of them get follow-on rounds? I mean, how do you do it?
To my mind, I think that if you set a culture where frugality is not part of the culture early on in a business, and one of the easy ways to destroy that mindset is to sort of overfund a business, I find that it's very tough to fix that culture subsequently. So I am in the school which says that even if you want to, back an entrepreneur with lots of money, give them 90% of what they need at every point in time and do that 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, but don't over-finance a company.
But in a competitive environment, the other VC fund will fund them. And what do you do?
Luckily, there are enough fish in the pond, so you walk away and find some other fish. But if you do something which, in the short term, makes you feel better and makes you feel like you won and you've sort of elbowed out somebody else, but longer term, you're setting up the business for failure. Ultimately, we will succeed in our business if the businesses we partner with succeed. Right? And I think that if you compromise on that, ultimately things will not go well for you itself.
So frugality and prudence is still relevant for a certain type of investor, but there are certain other type of investor who, who will sort of bet large checks and they got large funds, and therefore hope that if one will succeed, it will make up for the other ones.
I think you probably have to go a little bit into detail here. The faster, better, cheaper kind of model, if a larger check allows you to get scale to get cheaper, maybe that's a different sort of consideration. The Brave New World kind of investing where, you can have 9 failures, 1 succeed, but the payoff is so large, which is a lot of times what I would call the academic, the new insights from technology and academia, you pull it in, create a product and then look for customers. That kind of investing is not that prevalent in India. I mean, there just isn't that much of a research base, which allows you that high failure rate. I think in India, you cannot have that kind of failure rate, except with very small money, with very small checks, and with a very frugal mindset. The third thing I think one needs to look at is the fact that often the Indian customers' paying ability is low. So if you try to replicate cost structures of American companies and sort of pay founders what American founders get, and they sort of, and down that ecosystem, you will develop a cost base which will defeat the business to start with. So it's again something you have to be sort of cater to the domestic context. You can't step away from that.
So which brings me to another relevant point that, look, if I'm running $1 billion fund, right, and I'm 220 economics, right, I get $20 million a year as management fee, right? In that much money, if I run a tight team, I can die and go to heaven on management fee. I don't need carry. So is there a moral hazard that has emerged in the VC industry as a consequence?
Has been for a long time, but I think a lot depends on the mindset of the people running the business. That fee business can make you rich, it can't make you wealthy. So if you aspire to sort of play the game long term, you have to understand that the fee is nothing but a loan that an investor gives you against your credibility. And if that understanding is clear, that that's just a loan against your credibility, I think that people will do the right set of things.
Got it. Now, one more point. Traditionally, most risk capital in India has come from overseas. Right? Is that changing, and is it changing fast enough?
I think it's changing dramatically. The only concern I have is that often it is changing. If I look at the sheer amount of money being deployed, it's changing very dramatically. I think that the discipline around that deployment probably, I think we are going into some kind of slowdown just now, and I think that shakeout is probably necessary because I think that deployment has happened with very poor discipline in the last, I would say this last 5-7 year kind of run up.
So Indian money in early stage, that's happening, but it's not happening in disciplined manner, you're saying?
Not at the moment, but that's a sort of normal part of the maturing of any marketplace.
But
So
look,
I'm not
you're
terribly
making
concerned.
illiquid investments which could flame out. Now, if too many people get their fingers burnt, will the whole, the nascent sort of, or the recent sort of Indian investors in risk capital, will that be impaired substantially?
I think it's going to go through a cycle. I think it will decline for sure because of the flame out. Because there's been too much of what I call the Me Too investing. These 5 people are investing, therefore I must jump in. The relative valuation of this is A, B, C of these companies are traded at this kind of revenue multiple or this, or you make up any metric you like. And I've discovered one thing, that the newer and newer metrics that are sort of used to justify valuation, the more trouble you're in. Right? And I think that those will burn, and I think when people go back to first principles and basics, when they look at investments, things will restore. But we will go through a cyclical downturn for sure.
What I hear you say, my sense is you're in a minority. Okay, most other VC fund managers don't talk like that.
I don't know, I mean, what they say publicly, but I'm sure that if they're going to be around in our business, they should think like this at least. But one thing I should say is that when we started Bearings in 1998 in India, there were 40 firms, out of which 2 survive. That's Chris Capital and ourselves. Some of the others did reinvent themselves, some of the larger institutions, and they created new teams. But even if the institutions survived, the teams didn't. So there is a high mortality rate in our business.
40 में से 2 बचे हैं. और अब मार्केट में कितने हैं?
I think there must be, if you count
Cat 2Fs, overseas VC funds, सब मिला मिलू के.
I think the number will be in thousands.
Thousands?
Yeah.
तो 5 साल बाद कितने बचेंगे?
I don't know, but
more or less.
I think it would be significantly lower.
So you're saying the VC industry is headed for a shakeout?
And actually, this has happened several times in the last 26 years. I mean, it's a cycle like any other business. We're a business, and
that's not good news for startup founders, man.
We're a competitive business.
That's not good news for startup founders.
I think for the good ones and the ones sort of, who are focused on the right sort of things and focused on the customers, there'll be never any shortage of capital.
यार ये बोलने में सही है. I remember between 2000 and 2004, there was just no venture capital available, and I remember going to the market several times, including coming and meeting you, right, more than once, saying, listen, we're running out of money, can you give me some money? And nobody gave us any money. Eventually we survived, okay? But I'm just saying that things get very tense if, enough venture capital dries up.
I think at that time, no one in India had money. There was one firm in India that had money, and no one in the entire market had money. And in fact, the capital markets, I think monopoly businesses, I remember buying on the listed side, monopoly businesses at 3 times cash flow. So it was an absurd time, and I've never seen that kind of time before or after. I think the depth of the markets today, I don't think that kind of situation will arise where a founder doing the right set of things will be short of capital. Now, but there are lots of businesses I feel today which have got funded, which never should have got funded.
Got it. Okay. So moving on. So now you've got a whole bunch of VC funds and which are not domiciled in India. They're investing in India through overseas structures. And you've got a bunch of VC funds which are under the SEBI scheme, AIFs, right? Are the regulations the same for them? And if not, what should be done? And what do you think of the kind of regulations for VC funds in India right now?
Again, I think that the regulator's gone a little overboard in terms of prescriptions and even they've introduced a new exam which I don't know how that has any relevance to actually managing money and sort of linking those two things. And I mean, you know that I teach on the weekends, and it's I look at the sort of framework of what's been done, and I really worry that it's encompassing hedge fund kind of issues with venture issues and with listed market issues and portfolio management and tax and regulation and creating one hodgepodge. I think that, but like all things, I mean, you sort of go from one extreme of no regulation to over-regulation. I think that will also correct.
Correct. I hope so. Now, with the change in the government in the US, right, how do you think it's going to impact VC investing in India, availability of risk capital in India, or Indian startups in general?
I think if Trump were to follow through on his this thing of throwing out a lot of people and kids of H-1B, workers in the US, and I think you'll get a huge, very qualified talent pool with an exposure to the US market suddenly available here with exposure to a wide variety of technologies. I think it'll give a big fillip and big boost to the Indian ecosystem if that were to happen.
Got it, got it. Okay, listen, we are open for questions from the audience. We have another 10 to 15. Yeah, there's a question. Yes, just introduce yourself and ask the question. And you give him a mic. Can you give him a mic? Thank you.
Hello.
Just raise your voice. It's okay. We can hear you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Divyank. So my question is to you guys. You guys are the OG investors, right? And what do you think?
No, OG is just, they're saying you're old, okay? It doesn't mean that we know a lot.
Okay. But you guys are the marquee investors then. And what do you think about industries that have caught everybody's attention, but they're not as formalized as the other industries? For example, I run a startup in the hyped sneakers and luxury fashion goods space, right? And it's not a formalized industry, but whichever investor I go to, they're like, यार तुम बहुत बढ़िया बंदे हो, तुम बहुत सही चीज़ बना रहे हो, but TAM बड़ा छोटा है, TAM बड़ा छोटा है. So what do you think about industries that are booming and have got everybody's attention?
Just an example of expensive sneakers.
Yes.
So Info Edge Ventures has invested in a company called Culture Circle, which is in a similar space, right? So at least we don't, I mean, see the thing about TAM is a funny thing here. If you are investing in category creating companies, right, you don't look at TAM today, right? मुझे याद है, in the year 2000, we had run Naukri for 3 years. We were doing 3 lakhs a month revenue. तो हमने एक business plan बनाया. That business plan showed that we would, from 3 lakhs a month, we'd go to 1 crore a month in about 4 years' time. So, 30 times, that's significant, we thought. And we went out in the market, and bubble time, we spoke to 4 investors. We didn't hire a banker. I didn't know what a banker was in those days. I went myself directly to investors and spoke to 4. We got 3 term sheets, bubble time, right? ICICI Venture, the fund we went with eventually, said, listen, man, with this kind of projection, we can't give you that kind of valuation. Okay, at 1 crore a month, you don't deserve a 50 crore valuation, which is what you're asking for. And I simply said, I've already got a term sheet at that valuation. So if you don't want to give it, it's fine, I'll go with the other investor. And they gave us a term sheet. Okay? When 4 years out happened, instead of doing 12 crores in the year, we did 84 crores. We were wrong by 7x. How ICICI justified internally was that, listen, the company saying this, we think they're lowballing, we think much more will happen. And so they took it upon themselves, which is a good thing for us, because when the audits used to happen, nobody would say you underachieved compared to your commitments, so there was no pressure on us, and we got the money anyway, and eventually we delivered. Now, that's a happy ending. It doesn't always happen. But point I'm making is, we genuinely believed 1 crore was aggressive. 1 crore a month was aggressive. But we did 7 crores a month. So TAM in category, when you're creating new categories, can be deceptive, both this way and that way, you know. And what you do in an early stage sort of company on a projection is an Excel sheet and is frankly largely fiction. Yeah, कुछ भी बोल सकते हो. Okay. The question is, does the investor believe you or not, Rahul?
I agree completely. I mean, in early stage businesses, it's all about the entrepreneur and the space broadly. If you think that the space itself is going to evolve and there's going to be sort of more revenue pools in that space, and you actually believe the entrepreneur and the team that's there, it's usually worth doing. Because like I said, I've never seen a single, not one investment where it has actually panned out the way that we had looked at originally. I'd also like to react to another thing that you said. You said that, you know, we are the old guys and we are experienced and therefore we know what we are doing. Let me tell you that the world is changing so fast that if either Sanjeev or I were to sort of look at and say that this is what happened in the past and therefore we know and this is what will happen, and we walk into office with that mindset, you can be sure that we are done. Because everything is evolving, changing very rapidly. So I don't think we have quite that kind of advantage that you all think we do. We don't. Some of the younger, fresher people with uncluttered by skeletons and mistakes might actually make smarter decisions than we would.
Absolutely. So I'm 61. Rahul is 59. 59, right? Yeah. Okay. So we did Culture Circle. और मुझे समझ नहीं आया कि यार 6 लाख रुपए का जूता, sneaker, how, TAM क्या है, who will buy it, this, that, whatever. Finally, the younger lot said, listen, just stay out of it. We want to do it. So I said, okay. And that's how we did the deal. So it's not that I know. I don't know. I know that, I know that I don't know. That's the only thing.
The reason Sanjeev and I have survived is that we spend time to figure out what we don't know, and that helps us survive.
And I don't know how a shoe can sell for 6 lakhs, a sneaker. I don't know. I still don't know. But my team knows.
Yeah. And I think it's panning out well for you, right?
Yeah, so far, so good, yeah. No, I have no problem with people saying I'm wrong as long as they're right.
So I'd just like to point out that I'm also building a direct competitor to Sanjeev Sir portfolio company. So if any of you is interested, I'm right here. And if anybody is willing to give Sanjeev Sir and his company a fight, I'm here with you. Let's go. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi, I am Udisha from the Business Standard. So one question. So if we look at last year, in 2024, we saw a lot of people who were working at the startups, people at the CXO level, CEOs and co-founders basically, they either step down or they exit the companies or they started some new ventures. So if you see, based on your experiences or some data, do you see that there was a trend that we witnessed and it heightened in 2024 compared to 2023? That's one question. Number two is that how do you see these exits? Given that a lot of startups are eyeing for IPOs going forward, how do you see these exits and always in a bad light, good light? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, I don't know if there was an increase between 2023 and 2024. Maybe it's anecdotal, but I've not done an enumeration. But let me tell you something in general. Whenever capital ebbs a bit, okay, in companies or industries, there's churn. Okay, that's a natural tendency, whether it's a listed company or unlisted company. अगर जब पैसे कम होते हैं, तो churn होता है. जब sale नहीं हो रही होती, churn होता है. जब आपने projection कुछ दिए हैं और कुछ और pan out होता है, तो churn होता है. That's my general observation. I do not know if 2024 was worse than 2023.
When there's discomfort, people leave. I mean, and that's just normal. I don't see that as sort of being very meaningful or significant in any way.
ये 2000 में भी हुआ था, 2001 में भी हुआ था, ये 2009-10 में भी हुआ था.
I think one other thing which is, we alluded to it earlier in our discussion is that when times are booming and there's a lot of capital and lots of and it's making front page news of startups and startup ecosystem, etc. lot of people sort of wander into that space, right? I mean, you'll have a lot of very qualified people, etc. But the minute stuff gets tough, they are the first ones to say that, you know what, I'll go do my MBA here, or I will go back to a sort of regular kind of job where there isn't this much uncertainty. This is again part of the market cycle. I wouldn't read too much into it one way or the other.
Thanks. There was a question in the back, sir. The gentleman in the back had a question. So you had a hand up at the back, last row. Yeah, there's a hand up there.
Thank you so much. It's a fundamental question in the sense that India missed creating fundamental technologies like a search engine. And we built a lot of solutions, a lot of businesses on top of fundamental technologies. Now we are seeing that happening in AI. Do you see India going forward building LLMs of our own or Gen AI solutions of our own? Or again, we're going to repeat building on top of existing LLMs?
Sure. So look, I think that we beat ourselves up too much for these kinds of things. Everywhere, historically, economically, it's always been the richest economies in the world which have the lowest cost of capital, which do fundamental research and do fundamental breakthroughs. And that's because innovation is expensive, and it requires a lot of capital. We are still a poor country, so I wouldn't sort of worry too much about it. I think if we copy quickly for what's available, and we sort of build on that and build efficiency and productivity-linked models on that, I see nothing wrong with that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. It will happen. The government is changing cost of capital in different sort of academic institutions like the IITs, etc., to enable that kind of risk-taking at that early stage and link academia with industry. But this is a very new trend. I mean, people like America have been doing it for 60, 70, 80 years. I mean, we've been on this bandwagon for maybe 5, 7 years. It will happen. I think we shouldn't worry too much about it. And as far as AI is concerned, look, rebuilding the foundation models, I'm not so sure it's such a smart thing to do, given the fact that if you look at the sheer dollars that the big boys who build those models are sort of plowing into it, and the almost monopolistic sort of hold they have on the talent pool required to build it, I think we should use it and build on top of it.
This is a question that's been getting asked ever since, 20, 25 years. I remember 20 years ago, there's a question at every conference, and Alok is smiling, because he remember that question, why wasn't Google built in India? Okay, it's a standard question tha, har ek conference mein, har ek panel mein. The answer is, look, the best consumer products are created where the consumer is. And if a Google had to be built, the kind of capital and engineering resources required, right, meant it would be created in the largest market. Because that's where you can get the kind of capital, because that's where you can get the kind of revenue, and you can have the kind of outcomes that investors want to invest behind those kind of technologies. And that would be in America. India may products will be created for the Indian consumer. B2B is different. I'm talking about consumer products. Okay. Now, the kind of compute power and engineering resources required to build an LLM, I think India simply does not have, because the capital required, the market size over here is very different. Now, tomorrow, as more semiconductor companies build GPUs, and if the cost of compute goes down, and compute becomes more affordable, who knows? There may be LLMs built in India, but right now, it will require a massive and mammoth effort to build even one LLM in India. I believe the effort's going on, but it will only very few large corporations can do it, and maybe government can do it.
I'd just like to add that if you look at all technology, innovation, disruption, there's always what I call a hype cycle. There's always sort of, a bubble and a hype cycle, and that hype cycle is very necessary for adoption, because with that hype cycle brings in a lot of capital. With that capital, there is what I call the installation phase of any kind of technology adoption. What happens there is that it brings down, because so much capital goes in, it brings down the cost to the developer, to the user, of using that technology. I think you'll see exactly the same thing in AI. Some $800–900 billion have gone in already. Probably a few $1 trillion have been earmarked to go into that ecosystem. It's going to create an oversupply of AI enabling infrastructure and foundation models. And I think that people who use that infrastructure and build upon it will show, gains over a long period of time. There was a time when people were talking about the internet and saying that, internet is there, but there's nothing to sort of monetize, etc. And I hear the same kind of discussions around AI. I think the AI impact will be felt right through our lifetimes. It's not going to be in the short term. But business models have to be created, and they will be created the more and more compute power costs come down and access goes up. And I think the amount of money going into that ecosystem, that will happen.
But our time is up, but I'd like to loop in Alok Mittal in this to answer this question, actually. So Alok, if you can help us, in your opinion, can you give me a mic? In your opinion, India में LLM बनेंगे कि नहीं? और कब बनेंगे? और क्यों नहीं बन रहे? You want to stand up? Yeah. Alok, as you know, is TiE Delhi president.
So Sanjeev has always had this tendency to deflect a technology question at me. I haven't written code for 20 years now. So here's my thought on this, right? I think there are spaces where it makes sense for India to build LLMs. And I think the vernacular dimension of this is the most important one in my mind. So I do think that we should figure out a way as a country how we create stuff in that area. I don't really see the merit, as both of you pointed out, of saying, hey, we need to do it because others are doing it. But I do think the vernacular dimension is something that can bring a lot of value. But now, whether that is partially a publicly supported effort or how we fund that is a real question. This is not venture capital domain.
Yeah. Thanks, Alok.
I think I'd like to have the last word. I've done many interviews and many fireside chats and these kinds of things in my career. But it has never been anchored by anybody more qualified than Sanjeev sitting here. I find it extraordinary that it's not the other way around, that I'm not interviewing him and it's the other way. I think that's an aberration by TiE, but thank you for that.
Well, actually, I'm a lazy kind of guy, and it's easier to ask questions than to answer them. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahul, and thank you, Sanjeev. I have been with TiE for 13 years. Today, I met Rahul for the first time. He was one of our founding charter members. It is a special day for me, too. Thank you again. And I think this is a great way of celebrating our 25th anniversary as well, bringing some of the pioneers of TiE together to talk about what things are going to be in future. That is what we are looking for. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjeev and Rahul. Folks, we are breaking for lunch, so we will meet after an hour. Hope to see you all back here for the rest of the sessions. Thanks.